Hi, it's Gabriella with True Marketing. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I know this is a very, very important topic, how to sell Southern and East Africa. And I think that it's one of those, it's just a blessed continent. We work with DMCs in the Southern, Eastern, and Northern part of Africa. So kind of, all over the place, we've got you covered here at True Marketing. So what we're going to do in this presentation is focus primarily on Southern and East Africa, which are huge sellers. They can be extremely profitable. And it doesn't just have to be that standard itinerary. There are so many more wonderful secrets to be uncovered, so many beautiful things that you can take advantage of. So that's the goal today, is really to share more about what can be done differently when you're looking at selling Southern and East Africa. So thanks. So here we are. We have a map of Southern Africa. We'll start here first. We proudly represent Private Safaris, who is an amazing DMC. They cover South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and can help with some of the islands as well. So we've got a lot of different reach there, Seychelles and beyond. So Mauritius even, which is great sometimes to combine with a safari stay. So South Africa really does have that sort of that initial point of arrival. As far as airlift, we do have some good news. United has started a flight from nonstop from Newark to Joburg, got Delta service from Atlanta. There are easy connections. Now they are coming back through Europe. That was always a popular way to go. So, United States, various key cities through key capitals in Europe to Southern Africa, and that includes Namibia. There's some service there too. And also on Emirates. Emirates does a really great job of connectivity, and for people that want to, there's tons of Emirates flights from the US. So if you want to do a stopover, break the trip up a little bit and stop over in Dubai, that's a really great recommendation as well, especially if you're traveling with kids. So that's just a little bit about the airlift situation. It is getting better, which is wonderful. So in South Africa, it's usually your first point of entry when you're heading to this region. You see Pretoria with the star, that's the capital, which is near Johannesburg. Most people do Johannesburg, Cape Town, and a safari, but I'll get into a little bit more about what's possible. But what's really nice is there are so many ways because of the borders and the ease of travel. As far as flight times and such, you can easily do an extension and add a few countries in. And then at the end of this presentation, I'm going to share with you something really fun, which is 5 countries in one that you can actually do in the course of 10 to 14 days, which is wonderful. So we'll reveal that in a bit. So now we go over to East Africa, just kind of off the top. Here we work with Safari Trails, who's a wonderful DMC based in Kenya, but they handle packages with Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda. So Kenya and Tanzania, and I'll dive into those a little bit more in the presentation, but primarily you're going to look for the wildlife and the adventure, not as urban as South Africa. But it's really focused heavily on the nature and the culture and the adventures that you can have in the open plains. And then Rwanda and Uganda would be more popular for those that want to check off that wonderful bucket list item of gorilla trekking. That is an amazing opportunity there in both countries to be able to spend time with the gorillas. So that is that's East Africa. And what you should also know is that in places like Kenya and Tanzania, it doesn't just have to be safari. Lots of people do tend to want to do a combination. You can do Kenya and Tanzania together, but there are plenty of lovely beach resorts in Kenya that some people don't realize, and you can easily combine beach and safari there. Same thing in Tanzania. You can jet off to Zanzibar, a nearby island, where you can have that luxury beach feel. Maybe before or after you do something like a safari or even a daring Kilimanjaro trek, which is also possible there too. So as I mentioned, in South Africa, we'll start in Cape Town. I mentioned that most people, especially a first-time visitor, and even as you go, I mean, I've been umpteen times and I still always want to go to Cape Town no matter what. It should be a part of that first itinerary and then beyond. So when people think of Cape Town, sometimes they think coast, they think Table Mountain, sort of the standard activities. But what we want to do is encourage you to look beyond, because there are so many different things you can do to see Cape Town and experience Cape Town in a whole different way. So for, you've got Table Mountain, but how about a sunrise hike up Table Mountain with a surprise breakfast, instead of, or taking the cable car up and surprising a loved one up there with something very special as well. You can do that. You can abseil off of Table Mountain if you really want to get a nice adrenaline rush. I always say it's great as far as Cape Town goes to get a city tour in, even if it's a half day, just at some point to orient yourself, because it is beautiful and there are so many different areas and sections. So it's always nice to orient yourself. But once you start to feel a little bit more confident, I always recommend something here that you see on the bottom left, the Cape sidecar. So you actually have a motorcycle and a sidecar. You get the goggles, the helmet. I have done this. Lots of fun. And it's a really unique way to sort of tool around the city, be able to go in and out of small streets and kind of really explore the lay of the land in a very different way with the open air, you know, and the fresh air, especially, which everybody wants today. It is just really lovely and a lot of fun. You may have heard of Boulders Beach. It's a beach not too far from Cape Town, not too far a drive, usually a stop between Cape Town and Cape Point, which is where the two oceans meet down in the south. But it is actually really fun because that beach is sort of inhabited by penguins. So you can spend time with the penguins if you want to walk, or you can do fun things like kayaking with the penguins. You see these aqua bikes, you can do that. And then you're in the middle of them. So you're hearing them, you're watching the way that they move and interact with each other. And it's really sweet. You know, we had honeymooners not too long ago that did the kayaking, you know, on a beautiful, stunning itinerary. And I was really surprised, this is before, you know, pre-pandemic, but that they came back, and after even going to an elephant orphanage, they did so many different things, but the kayaking with the penguins just resonated so beautifully with them. That was one of their best adventures. And then in Cape Town, you know, you've got the city. A lovely thing to do also is if you really want to feel like a local, we have guides that are just, you know, jacks of all trades and men about town. They know the coolest places to go, the greatest haunts. So we can send you out on something like a jazz safari where you can get access to all the coolest hidden jazz clubs. If you have clients that have a particular culinary interest, we can do things like that too, set them up in a particular restaurant or have them maybe meet a chef, you know, and kind of anything along the lake. I did something that was really fun with my daughter and a friend and her daughter, the Cape Malay cooking safari, which I cannot say enough about. I always tell this story to people because it just meant so much. You actually go to the Cape Malay Quarter, which you probably have seen pictures of. It's very colorful, small houses and shops. And it's interesting. You meet a lovely guide or a lovely, you know, woman, a chef. I mean, there's a few of them. We happened to meet this amazing lady that you know was a chef and had cooked in a bunch of different restaurants and really knew her stuff. So she took us out to a spice shop and we shopped for spices and we smelled everything, and she explained the differences and what each one serves to enhance. And then we went back to her house and we cooked samosas in her kitchen. We made some other things, baked some bread, and the children played in her backyard on a trampoline. They climbed trees. It was so much fun. And then at the end, you actually sit down and wind up eating together and hearing her stories about her life in South Africa through times that have changed. So just beautiful, you know, touch points like that. Not far from Cape Town are the Cape Winelands, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. Franschhoek, Stellenbosch, and Paarl are generally like the three, sort of they meet in a triangle. Those are the three more popular, and there are beautiful hotels. Lovely scenery. It really feels like the end of at the ends of the earth. It feels like you are just not as of this universe. Really, it's just so stunningly naturally gorgeous, and it's all about the good life. So there, you're meant to, you know, sip and taste and eat wonderful food, and you know, go from winery to winery. We always recommend that you do have a guide and a driver, so you can, which we can arrange for you. So you can sample as much as you want, and you can go back and forth and taste and not have to worry about, you know, navigating and driving while you sip. So it's a lot safer to think about doing something like that, and we can organize that too. But it's always lovely to do maybe a couple of nights in Cape Town, and if there is time, 1 or 2 nights at least in the winelands, because it really is, it's so well worth it. Just a piece of heaven. And then for the active folks, there is no shortage of adventure. I'm talking like thrilling, you know, whether it's bungee jumping. You see these iconic towers in Soweto on the bottom left-hand corner. There's a free fall. There's a jump from there. Obviously, you are harnessed. These aren't just sort of base jumps. These are meant for tourists and visitors to be able to do. But you can do abseiling in the desert. You can do sandboarding. You see these folks here on the bottom right doing a dune buggy. You know, lots of different ways to sort of get out and catch that adrenaline rush, if that is, you know, what the clients wish. And then when you do a safari, there's different ways to think about it and to look at it. Oh, I just see this picture here very quickly, just to get back to Cape Town. Another lovely thing to do, because it is just so stunning. Cape Town, just framed by Table Mountain, and it's on the water. It is really, really wonderful. It's almost not enough when you fly into it to see that quick view while as you're coming in for a landing. You've got to see it, hovering over for a little bit. So we do helicopter tours that are usually 15 minutes or maybe a half an hour, and you can get just a dramatic view. I mean, you see that how beautiful that is in the right-hand corner. So that is something I'd recommend too. So as I mentioned, when you're on safari, it's of course you have enough to do because you're out usually 6 hours a day, broken out into like 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening, doing your wonderful game drives and searching for the big five and more. But if you want to sort of spice up a journey and you're out on safari, there's a lot of things that you can do also. So lots of times, even during the day, in between in between eating, and you're usually pampered and very, very well fed at a lodge. There are lots of things you can do with a guide, like go out on a bushwalk, which is like kind of thrilling because you never know what's under your feet. You can do various hikes and treks nearby. You can do a hot air balloon, which is lovely in the early morning, and you can kind of see, animals from a different vantage point, and then you can land and organize a surprise champagne brunch, things like that, and lots of different conservation and volunteer projects that you can get involved in. So for example, say you want to go out with a rhino tracker and see what it is that they do to protect the rhinos, or the same thing with elephants, or such. If there's a particular animal that somebody in your orbit is interested in, you can generally, or we can generally, as long as we know, find a project that might suit them and really interest them. And that is something really cool for kids to do. So if you have a family, something definitely to integrate. So getting back to that adrenaline rush, again, the hikes, there is some skydiving in Kenya, and then the Kilimanjaro climb is interesting. A lot of people have that on their to-do list, at least, once in their lives. We do have plenty of ways to organize that for your guests. Lots of times, surprisingly enough, it's not all about fitness. It's about how well you can acclimatize. So depending on which route, depending on level of difficulty, well, not so much difficulty, but depending on, time length as well. Sometimes some are longer than others. They can select the route that's going to be great for you. And then they send you up with guiding and porters and all of that. So that's great for the adrenaline seeker too. So that's on land and also in the sky. And now we have the water activities, plenty. You can see whitewater rafting. You can do tubing down a rough river. Plenty of snorkeling opportunities, especially outside of Cape Town and along the coast. Kiteboarding. Zanzibar, I think, is one of the top 3 areas in the world for the best possible kite surfing, if you're into that, on the eastern coast of Zanzibar. And then there are some real, beyond the standard, some extreme thrillers like caged crocodile diving, caged shark diving. Those are really amazing. Those will give you a jolt. You can do some more kayaking in an area called St. Lucia. Again, kiteboarding in different areas. You can go out with shark patrol, again, with that, the animal, the wildlife angle and the conservation angle. Learn a little bit more about how it is that they count and care for, depending on where you're going, what the project does, but depending on your interest of animal. Turtle tracking even, you can do something like that. Now, I mentioned gorilla trekking before. I just want to get back to that because that is something it's just extraordinary. There are very few silverback gorillas left in the world, and this is your opportunity to really get up close and personal. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's usually for better for someone with a moderate to advanced level of fitness, because there is a lot of walking and trekking through mud and you get dirty. Accommodations can be very nice, but there are also some that are more basic. It's not a luxury journey, as far as glitz and glam, but it really is luxury as far as what you are going to be exposed to. So to be able to have a little bit of FaceTime almost, and photographic time with gorillas. I think you get about 45 minutes once you make the trek inland from your vehicle, through the trails. You do get some opportunities. So the permits are expensive, several $100s per person per day. We recommend at least 2 days, because if you don't have such a great viewing or experience on the first day, or weather is not wonderful, at least you have that second day to make up for that, should that happen. And if it's perfect both days, then you get two perfect glimpses and photo opportunities. So it's just one of those amazing things. And again, just primarily doing that in Rwanda and Uganda. Now, we used to say this was for millennials only, or millennial focused, but I think that the landscape has changed, especially, coming out of this time frame where we were so restricted. People really want to live. They want to taste food. They want to meet people. They want to get out there. So these are some of the ideas that we had thrown out originally to a younger audience, but that are all of a sudden appealing to really anybody. So just to share a few fun things that you can do. And I always say, just to touch on Johannesburg, sometimes it's a city that gets overlooked. It's most probably the one that you're going to first fly into, but a lot of people don't spend too much time there, and it is such a mistake, because it is an amazing city, so diverse with so many different areas. There's emerging designers, there are restaurants, there are, purveyors and producers of all sorts of foods and materials and crafts, and there's lots of art. And it really is just a place to really connect and sort of really get an understanding of the history of South Africa. But just, all over the place, in every city and every pocket of the country, there's wonderful touch points. So if someone there, you may not know that a lot of beer gets produced in South Africa. So in Cape Town, for example, we can do a craft beer tour with special tastings at Cape Town's hottest bars. We mentioned the helicopter flight, the motorcycle. If someone is into art, there are plenty of galleries and spaces in Johannesburg, not just with art, but also in design. There's some emerging designers that have little pop-up spots. So you can, have something organized, just centered around a day of seeing designs. Recently had some guests that just went over, and all they wanted to shop for specific crafts. So they had a full day guide who was very schooled in that and was able to take them around and do just that very specifically, because that's what they wanted. There are lots, food markets that a guide can take you to. And I've been through a few, some of them that were not so, exquisite, but more like rough and ready. And I just had the most wonderful time watching and watching interactions and tasting things. Beautiful. You can do certain tours at wineries based on, what their focus is. There are some that have, biodynamic production of wine. You have organic, food growing farms. So depends on what you want. There are special restaurants that, of course, specialize in unique cuisine. So if somebody wants something more Pan-African, there are restaurants that can play to that. Somebody just wants pure, a steak and a real carnivore kind of dinner. Plenty of those as well. And I will say, as far as South Africa goes right now, the dollar to the rand exchange rate is very favorable as far as, American travelers. So, and even when it's not, it's still, there's an amazing value to be had. So I've often had just wonderful, wonderful dinners in exceptional restaurants with wine and really top cuisine, and walking out there, kind of not really believing what the bill was, because it was that affordable. So you do have plenty of reach there. There's a treetop adventure park, cycling. I mentioned the bungee jumping. One thing I will say is Soweto is a very, very important area in Johannesburg. It's a very large, sprawling township that, played a huge part in transformations that happened in South Africa. Nelson Mandela lived there for a brief period. We also, got the Hector Peterson Memorial Museum, lots of different things. And it's just really a place where life happens outside of just Johannesburg proper. And it's a wonderful place, rich with history and sort of an emerging middle class and emerging micro entrepreneurs, which is really fun to watch. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but a great way to experience that is on bicycle. And there are some outfitters there that are able to set you up and take you on the bike tour. So wellness is very, very, top of mind right now. Everybody wants to feel good. They want to refresh, revitalize, and there are plenty of opportunities in South Africa that sort of refresh the mind and reset the body. And you've got, multi-day walking treks that can be organized with beautiful pathways. Plenty of hotels have exceptional spas. You can see on the right-hand column. Some of them have, even if they're smaller pools, they're just designed spectacularly. And some put, little treatment cabins in the forest there, and give the spa sort of like an outdoor area with a little bit more of a fairy tale feel. So plenty of hotels that are at the 5-star level that have wonderful spas and are very, very Zen-like in their design and architecture. You can do things like a sip and cycle safari. So you're on bikes and you're tasting wine. So be careful with that. Maybe small sips, but you can do things like that. I mentioned the biodynamic wine estate. You can do a foraging experience before you sit down and eat at a chef's table. So you go out and you look for herbs and you look for, different types of things that are growing, fruit and all sorts of flora and and they teach you what everything is and what's okay to touch and what's not okay to eat. And then you resume back in the kitchen and you're able to eat a wonderful meal at chef's table. Again, I mentioned, lots of different walking tours that have to do with food. You can do plenty of wine tastings. You can do wine blending. In the winelands, you can do bread baking, a chocolate making experience. So there really is no shortage, and very, very wonderful things for honeymooners. It can be very romantic. And speaking of honeymooners, lots of ideas that are, that are waiting to be had. Private dinners are possible nearly anywhere, whether it's a hotel or whether it's an exceptional restaurant that can block off a table in a little private room. So anything in particular that the folks are looking for, we can do. There's a farm to fork culinary safari where you're, tasting organic creations, and locally produced items, which is wonderful, and that are blended into a dinner. If people are into organic and sustainable, methods and cuisine. You probably have seen at some point a beautiful outdoor tree house at Lion Sands. It is this luxury, tricked out, amazing accommodation that is up in the tree with all of your conveniences. And of course, a way to communicate with the base if it gets a little too scary. But you can spend a night in that luxury treehouse, which is amazing. All of our tours as well can be privatized, so nothing has to go with a group. If you like something you see, every single thing can be privatized. We can also do gin bar visits with tastings. It doesn't just have to be about beer and wine. So depending on what people really enjoy, everything can be privatized. And also to mention, there is, of course, we represent the Blue Train, which is one of the world's leading luxury rails. That is something exceptional to add on to any journey. It is 2 nights of slow travel where you can really appreciate the luxury of time and really get pampered because you are weighted on hand and foot and you are eating and wine tasting and doing all sorts of beautiful things all the way through. That travels between Pretoria and Cape Town and the reverse. It's 2 nights. And again, you're always going to have those areas in most itineraries. So it is a wonderful way and a very stylish way to travel between those points. For guests that love art and architecture, South Africa just does not disappoint. I mentioned some of the art galleries and the design experiences. Little towns in the winelands like Franschhoek, for example, have multiple art galleries. It's very art centric. There's a lot of sculptures and fixtures and installations. And, just Franschhoek itself, for example, is a work of art. When you see the natural beauty and some of the design at some of the resorts, the hotels rather. So you can do things like that, where you can take the wine tram and then, kind of visit art galleries in the morning, take the wine tram and do a wonderful dinner at one of their restaurants in the evening. Johannesburg is really just a mecca for art. Again, the galleries, again, the individual designers and all of that. But one thing that's really cool, and also in Cape Town as well, is to see the street art. So many places are sort of, they're covered in amazing, incredible murals. And you look at these things and you're like, these people are so talented. And beyond that, beyond just the spectacle of it, is the story behind each design and each creation. And that is really what makes it. And so there's happiness, there's pain, there's emotion, there's stories. And we have actually graffiti tours. We can go out with a guide who's very, very, clued in on a lot of these artists and what their meaning is behind all of this. And he can explain that. And it really does become something amazing, and kind of gives you a different sense of understanding the city. All right. So in East Africa, we mentioned, a lot of the activities take place center around wildlife. So beyond, the safari, which is just tremendous, both areas, Kenya and Tanzania, are blessed with amazing, amazing game and rich amounts of it as well. You can do things like going out with a conservation project and seeing how they work to protect whatever animal is most beloved to the guest. Hot air balloons. You can do local school visits. There's always a way to visit a local village or a school, leave your footprint by perhaps volunteering or dropping off donations. Elephant Orphanage, which is pretty famous, and you can actually go see and meet with the elephants or interact with them and see how this wonderful, wonderful organization is working to preserve and help raise those that are in need and sort of help the population. There are many ways to do all of this. This is just an overview, but what I want to sort of, also tell you about is different ways to experience Southern Africa all together with a multi-country journey. I mentioned 5 countries in one, and it truly is possible. So I'm going to show you how. This is, again, something to think about. So somebody who has 10, 12, 13, 14 days can actually do this. And a lot of people have vacation time banked up. So this is interesting. I just start with this photo here. This is Namibia and Botswana in the same photo. So I'm standing in Namibia, looking across the Chobe River to Botswana, to the Chobe Game Reserve. So it actually is, there's a certain point, and I'm going to show you just a second. Here we go. So you see this circle between Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. There is a point in the middle of that circle where all 4 countries converge, which is amazing. You might not have noticed ever. And there is a way, a very easy way on the ground to get between those points. Of course, things will relax, borders, this is something that I would maybe say to look at reaching for 2022. We need to make sure that everybody can enter into these countries rapidly, or without testing and all of that. That's still kind of being worked out. That's it changes all the time. But I feel that by 2022 it'll be a little bit more relaxed and maybe easier to pass between countries without having to integrate some of the testing and navigate the timing. But if somebody wants to do it now, it would be possible. So you begin in South Africa, and because you're going to fly into Joburg most likely, or Cape Town, but we put you in Joburg, and you just have a fascinating sort of cultural infusion. This particular hotel is the Fire and Ice, which is wonderful, and it's in an area with lots of shops and restaurants and great walking distance to things. So you can stay here and be totally busy at night. During the day, you can do things like drum lessons, live interactive cooking sessions, take in some music performances and performances of the arts as they start to resume, and leave a footprint, because there are plenty of places that you need volunteers and need people to come and visit and spread the word about. One of the coolest things that I found the last time I was there, and I'm actually going in about 2 weeks time, so I can't wait to share again, is visiting with some of the micro entrepreneurs and the real hustlers and go-getters that are making a difference in Southern Africa, in South Africa right now. This was actually an experience that I tried in Soweto, and I met with this woman who is a chef, which goes around from place to place, and she had learned all of her cooking just from her family. And we made a whole entire meal over the fire, and with the assistance of this gentleman and all sorts of different, local dishes. And that was just so much fun to spend time with her, hear her stories, and be able to cook this wonderful meal and then to be able to eat it. On the left is a gentleman named Oliver who runs Hotel Hope, which is one of my passion projects here. It is a children's home that I've been really volunteering and involved with for probably about 15 or 16 years. Amazing place where children are taken in from the street that are abandoned. Some of them are afflicted by various diseases, and they're just so much fun. They're so grateful. And these homes are just homes of love, filled with lots of volunteers, and you can go and play with the children, and you can help them. You can cook for them, help them with anything they need. And again, things will relax once, COVID restrictions relax. We'll have to see how that plays as far as in-person visits. I think it will get better in the future, because of sensitivity with the children. But just a point that there are so many homes and so many places that need help. So please always leave your mark. And on the micro-entrepreneurial thing, this woman was fascinating. Her name is Mary, and she actually made a little snack stop out of her kitchen. So a way to sort of make a little money to save for her grandson, who needs a little spending money. And her house is on the way home from the school, which at some points on that trek can be a little bit, goes through a little bit of rough area. So she sells these snacks, like these little gel packs and little, trail mix packs and stuff to kids for a hand, just a couple of coins. And she opens her front patio up to them so they can hang in a safe space, and they can have the snacks, and they can say hello, and get a little something in their stomach before they go home. And, everybody sort of wins. So, I also met a gentleman that took a landfill and basically created a small community garden. And that was fascinating to see how he's getting the community invested. Some people take abandoned garages and they make CrossFit studios out of them. So it is just so cool to see that. And that is, again, just part of the South African story that makes, that just makes that impact. Okay, so back to the 5 countries. So once you've done all of these beautiful things in Joburg, which is great, we move you on to Botswana. So it's an easy flight from Joburg to Kasane. It's less than 2 hours and it's usually a morning flight. And then you would be transferred to, in this case, just using Camp Kazuma, for example. So it's a luxury camp, not too far of a drive. And it's set on a water hole, so you can see elephants and various animals drinking, and you can you can see yourself pitching up in one of those chairs, having your sundowner with snacks and just watching, or even early morning. So it includes all of your meals, your house wines, your local beers, and a couple of different activities per day. So, you know, guided walks, bushwalks, drives in the morning and the evening. So you can do your safari there. And here's just an example of how it looks, just so dramatic and gorgeous, and that sort of tented feel. Then the next stop is Zimbabwe. So you go on, you go through the through the road transfer and through the border crossing. And in this case, we have Old Drift Lodge here, which is on the banks of the Zambezi, which is gorgeous. So you're not too far from Victoria Falls. So here you're near the Zambezi National Park, and you're near a lot of different fun things to do. So you can do a land safari. You can do a visit to Vic Falls, which I highly recommend. And then you can do a game drive on the river, sort of a river safari. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the Victoria Falls, just quickly, is an amazing, amazing site. It's spectacular, and it's a little bit different depending on which side you experience. So on the Zimbabwe side, it is just rougher and louder and a little bit more sprinkle and a little bit more interactive with some daring things to do, a little bit more adventure. And then on the Zambia side, it tends to be a little bit more calmer. So here's a very, very dramatic photo, but it is so impressive. You never forget that sound, the spray, just a wonder, even if you see it just from the one side, it's absolutely gorgeous. So here's an example of, you know, something that's not so tented with feel, has a little bit more contemporary hotel room feel, suite feel, you know, but still just with very dramatic views. And then you move on to Zambia. And here base you at the David Livingstone Safari Lodge and Spa, which is more of a grand style resort. You know, it's got the full service spa, there's a conference center, there's you know, a few restaurants, you've got proper, you know, hotel rooms that are very beautiful, lovely design. And here you can actually see, if you're looking out to the Zambezi and you look to the left, you can see the spray of the falls. And they do include activities here, but one thing I would say, you definitely should go to the falls and experience it from this side. But what I also think is stunning is they have a boat called the Lady Livingston, and it goes out and it has musicians on it, and it's got beautiful wines and snacks, and you can actually go out for a sunset cruise. Do not miss this. It is stunning. While you may not see a lot of animals along the way, what you see here, which is just incredible, is so many colors. I cannot explain to you. I will never be able to explain to you the colors you see in the sky at sunset and the way that everything reflects off of the river. It is just something to behold, and, you know, bring an excellent camera, because it's hard to capture it. You know, just something you have to sort of step away from the lens and just look, because I will never forget those colors. So that is really beautiful as well. And that's just a room at the David Livingstone. So very, very well appointed, revitalized rooms here. And then you'll move and end in Namibia, which is amazing. So Namibia is interesting. It's sort of like a square, almost like a trapezoidal shaped country. And then on the top right to the east is a very, very skinny strip of land. So that is exactly where, you know, at the end point, that's where this takes place, and that's where it converges with the rest of the countries. So this is actually really fun. It sounds complicated, but I'm going to explain it. So you take your transfer from David Livingstone to a ferry, and then you take the ferry to Kasane Immigration, which is back in Botswana. So again, these are not very far distances at all. And then when you get to Kasane Immigration, is basically like a very small office on the banks of the river. You're usually the only one there. They'll stamp you, and you get into a little boat, and you just sail across the Chobe River to a small little beach in Namibia. It's a very short ride, and you're going to see hippos along the way. Your game drive starts then. And there's a little man on the beach, or else he's in his little office, and he stamps you, and then you're at Chobe Water Villas in Namibia. So this is a beautiful property. It's 16 freestanding overwater villas. So that's the photo. That was where I was when I took that photo when I started this segment. So I'm on the Namibian side. In the middle is the river, the Chobe, and then you have Chobe Game Park across the way. So here it's very stylish, it's luxurious. It looks like it has a beautiful sense of place, but inside it's very highly, focused on design. The cuisine here is exceptional. And you have wonderful views, and they are very high up, because I will say you're woken up in the morning by the sounds of grunting hippos. There are crocodiles, but you don't need to worry, you're up. So nothing can climb and get you. But you can see, animals across the way on land. You can see animals in the river. It's just gorgeous. And they do include, several activities during your stay. I would always say do the drive in Chobe National Park, but I would also please don't miss the water safari. Go out every day that you're there, as long as you can. It is spectacular. You will see things like I'm obsessed with hippos, so it was wonderful to be surrounded by them. It's really scary but fun. Crocodiles, look like 100 feet long. We rolled up, I remember, on just a group of elephants, at the coast, right on the shore, just drinking and playing with their babies. You see sights that are just so spectacular from the boat. So I would always imagine that, that's probably how a lot of people imagine Africa. So this is a little bit more of the Chobe Waterville. As you can see how beautiful it is, very focused on design and style. Gorgeous cuisine. And this is just how life goes. I was literally, I can't, what you see here is what it was. I had my laptop to make a few notes, and we were filming some stuff, and, elephant right behind me. And that was just how it was. It's beautiful. It's an amazing journey. And right now, so many of the lodges, nobody is truly at capacity just yet. So it is a wonderful time to think about visiting, because, there is space at quite a few lodges. The rates, the exchange rate is pretty favorable. And, I can't wait to show you South Africa when I go in about a week or two. Life on the ground is very normal. They are doing better with vaccinations, and things are getting a little bit more back to normal in all fronts. So we look forward, and even if it's not now, 2022 is a great time to be thinking about planning, especially for groups and incentives. Even 2023 and beyond, rates are available, and programs can be quoted, so that you can safely look at booking moving forward. So this is just a wonderful, wonderful, little brief stop for you, to show you kind of what's possible. But I really, really encourage you all, if you're not ready yet, that's okay, but we would love to help you plan in the future. We can help break this training down for any of you and talk about more niche topics. Happy to do it. And we can always connect you to either company to be able to get more information and more definitive programs, and that you can put out there to your clients. So please let us know. And I thank you so much for joining me today. This has been so wonderful to have. I always love an opportunity to talk about Africa, and especially with all of you. And I look really forward to being able to help you and work with you in the future. Thank you so much.